This is Dear Strategy, episode 145. Welcome to another episode of Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions about product, business, and personal strategy. I'm your host, Bob Caparelli. This is episode 145, being recorded in May of 2024. Welcome back, strategy creators, to another great episode. This, again, is episode 145. And we are going to be talking about a bit of a rant, a bit of a lesson. I don't know how else to say it. Before we get into all of that, though, I never shared this on this particular show, but I'm a bit of an audio geek. So my main thing I geek out about is synthesizers and keyboards. I'm a piano player, I guess, composer, writer, and I've been doing that my whole life. Some of you probably know that from my work. I've tried to intersect that with the subject of business strategy, believe it or not, and that's what my book is all about, all kinds of different things. So creativity has always been a central focus in my life, and I guess that's centered a lot around keyboards, synthesizers, things like that. But I also have quite an affinity for microphones, and I collect them. I guess I collect them because I have hundreds, literally hundreds. I also rebuild them and, create my own. And it's kind of a cool thing. One day I'll share all that in some way. But the reason I bring that up now is because obviously doing a podcast, I do change the microphones in and out quite a bit, which is why sometimes if you're very astute, you may see that my tone kind of changes from show to show. It's probably not the best thing to do, by the way, because you should have kind of a consistent sound for your voice and sound for your show, but I like playing around, so there you go. And so I figured, well, maybe there's somebody else who shares this kind of hobby with me, and I should tell people what microphone I'm actually speaking on. It's not an advertisement. I buy all of these things out of my own pocket, but they do sound differently, so maybe it's for my own reference. As I listen back, I could remember what I was speaking on. But right now, I'm speaking on my favorite microphone, which is an Electro Voice RE20, used in a lot of radio stations and things like that. It gives you kind of like a boomy, clarity. I'd say kind of a boomy clarity. This sounds like an advertisement. I promise you it is not. But anyway, that's what I'm speaking on, in case that matters to anybody. But let's go ahead and get to the subject of today's program, which is going to be about the intersection of product experiences. What do I mean by that? What I mean is when you are responsible for a product or a product strategy, you need to not have tunnel vision, right? In thinking that your product stands alone from everything else. Your product, in fact, is part of an interconnected ecosystem, especially nowadays, where your product probably relies on many other products to provide the user experience that you are wanting to provide. Quick example, if I am a manufacturer of computers, right? The computer that I provide to you is supposed to perform a certain way, and I've designed it to perform a certain way. And besides all of the components that go into the computer, which I am mostly responsible for choosing as a manufacturer, so I give you a completed product and I've designed it, I've controlled it. What I give you should perform the way that I want it to perform. So I'm not talking about like the interconnection of products that are used within your product. What I am talking about, though, is in order to make that computer work, it needs software. It needs internet. It needs connectivity of some type, right? And so that computer is going to be working together with a lot of other different products, which may or may not provide the experience that I want my customers to have. And so as a product manager, you might say, well, I can't control what the software does, and I can't control the internet connection that somebody has. And to some extent, that might be true. However, if your product is being used in an environment that's less than ideal, who are the customers going to blame ultimately? Probably your product, or at least some percentage of them will. And even if it's not about blaming What it really is about is providing the experience that you want customers to have. And so you rely on other products that interconnect with yours to provide that experience. Now, I'm going to give you an example out of my life that I think it's very basic, but I think it's important because it shows kind of how this stuff works. So those of you who've been following the program for the last few episodes, you know that I've been redoing my bathrooms. I finished, by the way, all complete. And so I have nice new fixtures and all kinds of different things. Great. One of the things that we did when we redid the bathrooms is we, of course, retiled. We didn't do major reconfigurations, but we, retiled a complete shower, which involved, by the way, new waterproofing, new tile, new grout, the whole nine. And so the contractor that did that did a spectacular job, absolutely spectacular job. And it's pretty complex, right? If anybody wants to do their own shower and tile work, warning, it's not so simple as it might look, right? I mean, you have to do full waterproofing. Make sure you do waterproofing per the manufacturer's recommendations. And then you have to tile, grout, and so forth. So there's two interconnection points that kind of struck me during this process. One was the waterproofing, okay? So there's several different systems that you can use to waterproof a shower. And just to kind of, without getting too deep into it, you have waterproofing on the floor, you have waterproofing in the walls to some extent, up to a certain height in some cases. And then, those seams have to be sealed some way before you actually put the drain and the tile and all those things on it. Makes sense, right? So there's several manufacturers of waterproofing systems. And here's the trick. Those waterproofing systems consist of, the backer board, the tape that you use for the seams, I think they call it thin set, which you basically use for mortar. And I mean, I don't know all the technical terms. I'm not going to lie. But I do know that when a company sells a waterproofing system, they require that you use the components from all of their stuff, right? Their own components, because that's what has been tested to work together. Well, the reality of the situation is that a lot of contractors either don't know that or don't do that. And so they'll use one manufacturer's board and then another manufacturer's mortar and then another manufacturer's tape. And then when you put all those things together, it's not guaranteed. And the manufacturer of the system will say, well, we can't guarantee this work because you used, various different components from various different places. And it drives me crazy because my answer to that is, well, if that is the case, is that the best way to design a system? Or maybe is that the best way to sell a system, right? So in other words, if you're allowing contractors to pick parts and pieces that they can put together, and then you're saying, well, when they put those parts and pieces together, if they're not all our parts and pieces, we can't guarantee the work. Man, that's a problem, isn't it? Right? So maybe you should think about only selling your stuff as bundles so that nobody will ever use anybody else's system, or maybe do more education or make sure that everybody understands this, because the poor homeowner, who most of the time doesn't know what the contractors are doing, they're going to be left with a mess, right? They're going to be left with an unwaterproof, not properly waterproof shower. That's a mess. Why? Because the manufacturers did not consider how different products interconnect with one another, or how they're actually using these products in the field, right? So then kind of moving on with that same situation, in my case, the contractor did use the system, so they knew to buy all of the same components from the same place. And I actually guided them in that direction as well, because I did some research myself. But they did use this one manufacturer's system, so that worked. But then they do all the tiling, all the grout. They put this beautiful shower together. Takes them a week, and it's gorgeous, and it's a lot of work and a lot of labor. And then they say, well, you got to call the shower door people to come in and install the shower door. And what do the shower door people do? They come in, they drill a hole right through the newly waterproofed shower, right? Now, in my case, that didn't happen because I was watching over it, making sure that it didn't happen. But again, in most cases, there's story after story after story of all this waterproofing, all this time, all this labor going into play by the contractor who's doing the tile work. And then the person who comes in and does the shower door, well, that wasn't my problem. I know the shower door is good, but I don't know what they did behind the walls. So I'm just going to go ahead and drill a hole. And in fact, what you're doing is you're drilling right into the waterproofing that is supposed to be sealed. And so it's an example of just two systems that are not working together, right? And so what's the customer's experience? The customer experience is they're going to experience a leak. They're not going to know where the leak is coming from. So they're going to go to the tile people and say, there's a leak here. And then the tile people are going to rip it up and say, oh, it was the shower door people that did this. And the shower door people are going to say, well, we didn't know where the tile was. And see, that's not a good experience, right? Why? Because all of these companies, contractors, whoever it is, the service providers, they got tunnel vision. And then just continuing on, this one is the worst one, by the way. So part of my bathroom project involved a custom makeup cabinet. We had to make a custom countertop or custom cabinet plus countertop. And so we had a guy come in and build a custom cabinet vanity that matched some other cabinets that we had. And he built it to our specification. He spent lots of time matching the paint to what we had existing on some of our other cabinetry, and then buying this special paint, which is very, very expensive, bringing it to his shop, doing all this spray coating, and it just came out absolutely beautiful. He installed it. He did a template and he said, okay, now we're going to call the countertop people, right? So we called the countertop people who he knew and recommended. Countertop people come in and they go to install the countertop. Again, they did a beautiful job building exactly the countertop that we want. Everything looks beautiful. But when they came in to install the countertop, they came in with what I think should have been cleaner, but happened to be lacquer thinner. It might have been thinned down lacquer thinner, I don't know, but it was lacquer thinner. And when they put the countertop in place, they caulk it. And they used this lacquer thinner, or at least what appeared to be lacquer thinner, to wipe down the countertop after they put on the caulking. I guess the lacquer thinner is the best thing to get caulk off, so they use that to wipe down that countertop, make sure it's nice and clean for the end installation. Great, no problems necessarily there, but when they were doing this, of course, it's very, very difficult to keep this lacquer thinner away from the cabinet. And so when they went to wipe down the side of the countertop, picture this, some of that lacquer thinner dripped down onto this brand new, freshly painted cabinet that was custom built, and of course, took some of the paint off of that. And they weren't concerned with it because they didn't do that, right? They were just concerned with the countertop. And then I called the cabinet guy. I said, hey, yeah, they shouldn't have done that. That's crazy. But, you really can't control that. And to me, that was nuts. To me, that was absolutely nuts. But all of this made me think about that I'm dealing with the exact same thing when I coach people on product strategy and portfolio strategy within companies. They have tunnel vision on their own products. They put a strategy together for their product. They want to make sure that their product does exactly what they said the product should do. And for most cases, it does. But they don't always consider how that product is going to interact and play together with other products. And again, in the world of software, internet, cloud, your product probably relies on a lot of other products in order to deliver the experience that you're looking for. And if you don't know what those things are and you haven't mapped that out and you haven't ensured that your product works well together with everything else, or that you maybe need to provide instruction or provide guidance or provide something to say, here is how our product interconnects, or this is the minimum requirement you need on other products to make our product work, and blah, 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 down the line. If you don't do that, then your strategy is going to fail. Not even because your product failed, but because some other product that your product is supposed to interconnect with failed. Back in 2005, when I wrote not 2005, that's a long time ago, 2015, when I wrote my book, I dedicated a couple pages to this, right? And I kind of built out this little diagram that says you have to pay attention to the interconnected experience. And so if you read the book, you can kind of go and reference that. It's not complicated, though. Nowadays, though, what I'm doing is anytime I do product strategy coaching with companies, I'm saying as part of somewhere, either in the strategic section or in the company section, your analysis section, somewhere you need to map out what other products your product relies on to work, even if you don't own those products, and see if there are any interconnections that you need to be aware of that you need to incorporate into your strategy. And that's going to ensure that you deliver the right customer experience, because customers don't have any tolerance for you saying, well, that's not my problem. I mean, they, I guess, have to accept it, but they're not going to like it. And if you're looking for ways to differentiate, which every company always is, then this is a good way to do it, right? So map out those interconnection points, understand what other products your product relies on to work, and incorporate that into your strategy, and put strategic initiatives around giving your customers guidance, training, or even controlling some of those interconnections so that you can deliver the experience that you're looking for. So anyway, there you go. I hope that helps. Of course, if you want to learn any more about any of all this, please go to strategygeneration.com. That is the coaching business that I have, and I'm happy to engage with you or your group on strategy coaching if that's of interest to you. While you're doing all that, don't forget to make time for the plan, and we'll see you back here on another episode of Dear Strategy. Thanks for joining.